chapters 10, 11, and 12. Yay! Well, maybe 12. Hopefully 12, because we want to get through this. Anyway, chapter 10, in which the Newsies give Pulitzer one last chance. I don't know any more about strikes than you do, David said to the other Newsies who were gathered around the statue of Horace Greeley in the square. But it seems to me that before we do anything else, we've got to let Pulitzer know our demands. We've got to tell him in person that if he doesn't lower the prices of papes, you're telling me that they're not going to be able to differentiate between papers and papes. They're not fucking dumb. Davy's just being a douche. I'm going to call him Douchey Jacobs. Back to 50 cents a hundred, we're going to have to strike. It's not something that we want to do, but we're going to do it nonetheless. If we go on strike without warning him first, well, it's like taking a poke at a fellow when he doesn't know that you're even mad at him. Whatever. Pulitzer pokes people all the time. He does. The Newsies decided that David was right. Even though they had no love for Pulitzer, it was simply fair and just to tell him what they were going to do and give him an opportunity to worm out. Worm out. What the?
Wiggle out.
Wiggle out. Wuss out. Chicken out. Worm stash. I don't fucking know. Whatever. Since Jack was unofficial head of the Newsies, it was his job to approach the old man. Which would be magic considering he was living on a yacht in real life at this time. Who else had the nerve to enter the great bronze doors of the World Building? The great bronze doors. Nobody sees the wizard, okay? Nobody sees the wizard. Dressed in rags and demand an audience with the great publisher. After a moment's reflection, Jack decided to bring Les along in the belief that if he performed his consumptive cough a few times, it might melt Pulitzer's legendary icy heart. So now he's the Grinch. Fucking Joseph Pulitzer is apparently now the Grinch, according to Jonathan Last.
A ginger Grinch.
A ginger Grinch, no less, yes. They got as far as the front desk. Nobody sees Mr. Pulitzer without an appointment, they were informed by men in spectacles.
Nobody sees the wizard.
Nobody sees Mr. Pulitzer. When Jack
Real hoity-toity.
Real hoity-toity. When Jack refused to leave until he had been heard, a guard dragged him to the door, suspended him by his shirt collar, and ejected him by applying the toe of his boot to Jack's rear end. Jack got his ass kicked. Literally. Jack found himself lying beside Les in the gutter. As he started to get up, a gentleman with craggy features and slicked back hair offered him a hand. He's craggy. He was wearing a vest, striped shirt, and stiff collar, and had a kind, intelligent look about him. Jack noticed the man watching him earlier that day, but hadn't attached any importance to it. The man turned out to be Brian Denton, a reporter for the New York Sun, a rival newspaper to the World. Since it was about noon, Denton invited Jack, David, and Les to have lunch with him at Tibby's, a restaurant on Lower Broadway frequented by members of the press. Since when? That's like where the Newsies chill. Whatever. That's where Wally Frank lives. He was intrigued by these newsboys who weren't afraid of facing old Pulitzer face to face, and curious about their mission. So what exactly happened in there, Denton asked, when they were comfortably seated at a table heaped with sandwiches and tall glasses of sarsaparilla. Why does fucking sarsaparilla have an R in it? The R is silent.
Sarsaparilla?
I say sarsaparilla. I've never heard anybody say sarsaparilla. Whatever. People are weird. Old man Pulitzer wouldn't listen to our demands, Jack said through a mouthful of corned beef. Some snooty mug gave us the boot.
The boot.
Yeah, said Les, dusting off his knickers in imitation of Jack. He gave us the boot. Said, you can't see Mr. Pulitzer. Nobody sees Mr. Pulitzer. Real hoity-toity like. Yeah, said Les. Real hoity-toity like. He doesn't talk to newsboys, the man said. Oh, yeah? Jack said. Well, I ain't just a newsie. I'm a leader of this strike. Strike? Who's striking? I guess we are, David said uncertainly. 'Cause everybody says. Not remarks, not replies, not comments, not objects. Said. Fuck. Hold on, Davy, Jack said. Maybe we shouldn't be talking to this guy so free and easy like. Maybe he's one of Pulitzer's stooges. I assure you, I don't work for Joe Pulitzer. As a matter of fact, I'm with the competition. Brian Denton, New York Sun. Why would you agree to have lunch with somebody if you don't even know their name? He literally just
offered to pay.
What's to say he didn't want a Friendly's Happy Ending Sunday with that?
Well, maybe Jack didn't care.
I'm just saying, like... Jack and David introduced themselves. They told Denton how, without explanation or warning, their profits had been cut, even though they could hardly survive on the few cents they'd made before. David talked about his father's accident killing zombies, and how he and Les had to support the family by themselves. As they spoke, Dutton took a pad from inside his pocket and began to jot down notes. When they were done, he put away his pad and handed them a business card. "This is where I work," he said. "I want you to keep in contact with me. Let me know everything that happens." "You make it sound like this is something important," David said. "Only history can be the judge of that. Just remember that big changes are often wrought by little people. Our country wouldn't be what it is today if it hadn't been for a few angry farmers who refused to buckle under the King and Queen of England. P.S. Gabriel Damon signs in purple ink." Fact. Chapter 11, in which the boys go to Brooklyn. Brooklyn! It was decided that ambassadors would go to every part of New York to spread the word that the Newsies were on strike and to make it known that no scabbing would be tolerated. Kid Blink volunteered to take Harlem. Racetrack said he'd be comfortable with Times Square. Crutchy the Bronx, of course, because the fucking cripple goes to the Bronx. Mush the Bowery. Pie Eater and Snotty with 2 T's instead of 2 D's, the East Side. Specs and Skittery, Queens. Only when it came to the borough of Brooklyn did they all grow silent. "What's the matter?" Jack demanded of them. "You scared of Brooklyn?" "We ain't scared of Brooklyn," Boots volunteered. "But that Spot Conlon make us a little nervous." Spot Conlon's toughness was legendary. Yes, Conlon, not Collins. Conlon.
No, that would be Tom Collins from a different musical that has a song about Santa Fe.
Or who's that singer?
Phil Collins.
Phil Collins, yes. Conlon. And rant. "Well, he don't make me nervous. You and me, Boots, we'll take Brooklyn. Davy will come along for company." "What about me?" Les demanded, crumbling. "Can I come too?" Jack kneeled down next to him and shook his head. "Sorry, kid, but you better stay here. You never know what's going to happen in Brooklyn, especially when you're dealing with Spot Conlon." He brushed a lock of hair out of Les's eyes. "Cheer up, Charlie. We'll tell you all about it when we get back." "If we get back," Boots muttered. At dawn, Jack, David, and Boots hiked across the span of steel and cable that linked Brooklyn with Manhattan. Because you couldn't do that in the 5 minutes it took, since City Hall Park is like 5 feet away from the Brooklyn Bridge. Whatever. Fuck you, Jonathan Last. With the sun rising behind it, turning the sky purple and crimson, the Brooklyn Bridge resembled a great harp misplaced by a careless angel.
Wow.
Wow. "I've never been to Brooklyn before," David whispered. "I spent a month there one night," Boots replied. "This Spot Conlon," David began. "Is he as bad as they say?" Jack and Boots looked at each other and started to laugh. David kept his mouth shut after that. It was nearly late by the time they reached the old pier. A sign read "Brooklyn Excursions, Closed." The only sound besides the waves lapping against the pilings was the plaintive moan of a harmonica. Spot plays harmonica, apparently. As David's eyes adjusted to the dim light beneath the pier, he could make out the forms of boys appearing from behind the abandoned junk, the rusting stoves, carriage wheels, and bed frames. Spot lives in my dream place, apparently. He lives in, like, the ultimate urbex location. Under the docks with stoves and wheels and fun things that can kill you. Boys fell silently into step behind them and on either side of them. He had thought Jack and his friends were a tough lot, but these boys looked like they could pull out iron nails with their teeth. His first impulse was to run, but he knew better. In the presence of wild dogs, he had heard, one did not display fear. So he devoted all his concentration to maintaining an outward appearance of calm. Wild dogs. He just called the Brooklyn guys wild dogs. How do you feel about that?
I think it's not that far off from an apt description.
You tweeted at me. I'm a get glue thing now. That's awesome. Where was I? Blah, blah, blah. The boys accompanied them to a place underneath the pier where the soft ground went squish under the foot and the air stank of rotting fish. Blades of sunlight slipped in between the cracks in the boards overhead, striping the sand. Suddenly the harmonica playing stopped, and just as suddenly a figure stepped out from behind a rotting timber. He was a boy Jack's age, a red-haired, freckled gnome in a bowler hat a size too small for him.
Another ginger.
Another fucking ginger named Spot Conlon. "As I live and breathe," he said with a grin, "it's Cowboy Jack." "Glad to see you're moving up in the world," Jack said, casing the dark cave beneath the pier.
But how could Jack be Jack be quick?
I don't know, but Spot fucking lives in a cave because he's a ginger with no friends. Got an ocean view and everything. Very entertaining, Jack. Very entertaining. He snapped his fingers and a boy rushed to put a cigar in his hand. Spot placed it in his mouth and another boy rushed to light it. "You coming here? It wouldn't have nothing to do with a certain piece of stupidity I heard about a Newsies strike." "There's nothing stupid about what we're doing," David blurted out and regretted it immediately. Spot returned to him as though seeing him for the first time. "Who's this, your mouthpiece?" "He's a mouth with a brain," Jack said, "and if you know what's good for you, you listen to him." He turned to Davy and said, "Tell him, Davy. Tell him why we're striking." Spot Conlon's boys were closing in around David like a pair of jackals. Like a pack of jackals, my bad. Several of them, he noticed, carried sand-filled socks in their back pockets, weapons that could raise a nasty bruise. They fight with socks. I want some slingshots. Not fucking sand-filled socks. That's so wussy. "It seems to me," David began hesitantly, "that we're a lot more important than we think. Without Newsies, people don't get their newspapers. Papes, that is. Without Newsies, Pulitzer and Hearst and the other publishers are out of business. We're an indispensable part of the distribution system." "What does that mean?" Spot demanded. "Means that without us, they're up the creek," Boots muttered. "Well, that's for sure," Spot agreed. Jack took over. "The thing about a strike is this. It don't work unless every newsie joins in." "I'm my own boss," Spot said. "I do what I want and makes my own rules." "Sure you do," David said. "Everybody knows that. And that's why they all say, 'What's Spot Conlon gonna do?' If Spot Conlon's in on it, well then you can count me in too." "None of that you're the key bullshit?" "People say that?" Spot smiled and puffed up his chest. "After all," David went on, delighted to have found an opening, "Spot Conlon is the most respected and famous newsie in New York City. And probably all of the Eastern Hemisphere." Spot said. "What's that?" "Where's the south of Jersey?" Boots whispered. "Yeah, Jersey! Yeah, Jersey!" "Oh, yeah," Spot said.
Wasn't me.
No, it was Reeve. You see, David went. No. Shut up. "You see," David went on, "when people get organized and work together for the good of everybody, they can do just about anything. There's no stopping them. And that's why we need your support, Spot. If Spot Conlon joins the strike, everybody else will too. You're the man who makes us or breaks us." "You're right," Spot said to Jack. "The guy's got brains, but I got brains too. Enough to see where this plan could go down the toilet." "How do I know you punks won't run the first time some goon comes at you swing with a club?" "How do I know you're in it to win?" "We'll stick it out," Jack said. "How do I know?" Spot said. "'Cause I'm telling you," Jack said. "Not good enough, cowboy. You gotta show me. Convince me the strike ain't just some do-or-dare kid stuff, and then we'll talk." And without another word, he turned his back on them and sauntered away. End of chapter 11.